You're watching the Global Goals Studio. Right now we're talking about biodiversity and the impact of the climate crisis with Hindou Ibrahim and Maya Rose Craig. Maya Rose, your parents shared their love of birding with you. So my question for you is, how do we get other young people to see that biodiversity is really all about the world around them?
Just in my experience, one of the major things has been not pushing the really traditional ways of engaging with nature on people, because even though I'm a bird watcher, I know that really doesn't do it for most people, and instead, embracing a wider, more holistic love of nature and attitude towards nature, so that people start to understand that we're intertwined and we're absolutely reliant on the existence of biodiversity.
Thanks for that. And Hindou, I want to ask you, you come from a pastoral community in Chad. If I'm not mistaken, that's the Fulani community. Can you talk to us about how indigenous people have lived with the land in your region and how climate change is affecting those nomadic and pastoral communities?
Right. I am coming from a nomadic pastoralist communities, and most of my community is still living from one place to another one to find water and pastures. We still like a transhumance peoples. And that's also the way of living who attach us to our land, territories, and to the resources who are surrounding all the land we are moving on in. And for us, the land is everything. I mean, the land is our supermarket, the land is our food, it is our medicine, and it is the place where we are also learning all the lesson of the life that we're having. But of course, that make us very vulnerable to the climate change impact, because when we see the season change and when we see, it's becoming more dry all the places. So the most affected are us, because we do not depend from the end of the month salaries. We depend from the rainfall to get our pasture, and then our cattle can grass, and we can get milk. So the examples that I can share with you here, it's the milk is very important resource for our food and for our economy. It's changed by cutting 2 to 3 times now. So we cannot get a quantity that we used to get. And that's impact directly our food insecurity, because if we cannot have enough to feed our families and then to sell it to the market, so it's really breaking down all our society in 2 or 3 parts. And just like to link up, as indigenous peoples, as Maya said, for us, biodiversity and climate change, we do not put like, in this landscape is the biodiversity, in the next landscape is the climate change. So biodiversity and climate change are all in the natural resources that we are living on it. And if we lose one species, another one is impacted. It is the channel. So that's how indigenous people are seeing the land, and how my peoples are seeing the land that we are living with it. It is all the place that we are having. That's why I'm also very worried. If we lose our land, we are losing all our identity, and we are losing all what we are, and who we are, and what we have.
And a quick one, Hindou, how are people in your community, your nomadic community, how do they talk about climate change in their language? How do they describe it?
So, like seriously, we do not have just a single word that say climate change, because this word do not exist with us. But we do know the word that's saying peoples and nature. Like we are part of the nature. We know that we describe how we are living, birds, insect, plants, flowers, and us, and the wind and cloud. Those exist in so many descriptions. But climate change as disrupting things, we cannot say it in one word. And this is also how we can understand this civilization bring this breaking down of our system to call it climate change.
Maya Rose, last word to you in the Arctic Circle. If you could say one thing to the world leaders as they think about the UN General Assembly week and all of the geopolitics, what's that one thing? What would you say to them?
I would say that we're past the point of wake-up calls. We're past the point of extended, overly complex conversations. It's not a time for talking. It's not a time for deciding what their priorities are. It's a time for action. In fact, it was time for action 10, 20 years ago, and they have to start figuring out what their priorities are, and they have to start doing things about it now, or it's going to be entirely too late.
Yeah, let's hope they don't spend too long figuring out those priorities. Thank you so much for joining us from the Arctic, Maya Rose Craig. And from somewhere closer, Hindou Ibrahim, thank you so much for joining the Global Goal Studio today.
It's a great pleasure.
All right, stay with us. We'll be right back.
This year, teachers are learning new ways to teach. Parents are learning to lesson plan. And young minds are learning a new normal. This year, we are all students. At Verizon, we're enabling the education that students deserve. With credentialed teacher training, free lesson plans for parents, and tech-enabled solutions for schools nationwide, it's Citizen Verizon in action, our plan for economic, environmental, and social advancement.